Hey, how you doing? I was on a walk just now, taking a little stroll, and the neighborhoods around here, each neighborhood has at least one, it seems like, these little lending libraries, which is essentially a glorified birdhouse with a little door that opens, and it's filled with books, and it says, leave one, take one. And I don't think it's a policy where you have to leave one in order to take one, but it's just sort of a give and take thing. If you see something you like, you borrow it. And I happened to see the Holy Bible this time. And it was good timing because just yesterday or the day before, I was thinking about the fact that I'm a poser, a real poser, for not owning a Bible. Because lately I've been listening to biblical podcasts again. Not so much biblical podcasts as much as analyses. I think that's the plural of analysis, multiple analyses of the Bible. God. But I've been listening to those over the weekend. I was at my buddy's in Portland. He distributes records, and he had a couple copies of the best Christian metal bands, two records from the '90s. And so I was very happy to get those because I didn't own them on vinyl. And today I happen to be wearing the corresponding T-shirt to that band, and it's just been on my mind. I've had the Bible on my mind, as it's on so many people's minds. And so it was good timing finding this in the little lending library. And I'm not going to say it was totally synchronistic or anything because people leave Bibles in a lot of places. I don't think I've seen a Bible in a little lending library before. I don't always look, but I've looked often enough inside of those to where I feel like I would notice the Bible. And I'm actually surprised at that. I'm surprised that I haven't seen more holy Bibles in little lending libraries because that seems like an ideal place to leave one. Just like hotel rooms, because this one says placed by the Gideons. But I don't know that the Gideons would have placed this in the lending library. This one may have actually come from a hotel originally, and it made its way to a little neighborhood lending library. But as I was carrying this home, I was thinking about just regardless of what the Bible represents inside, all of its different interpretations, what it means inside of Christianity, outside of Christianity. I was thinking about what the actual physical Bible represents. And number one, walking home with this, I had this in my hand for about a half hour. I was very self-conscious of it. Because if you're walking around with a Bible, you look like someone who's going to start bothering people, first of all. You look like somebody who's going to, especially because there were a couple times where I just kind of stopped and like opened it up and just kind of looked through it. And it's like if you see a guy walking around and he not only has a Bible in his hand, but he's actually like opening it up. He's stopping on his walk to look inside of it. You got to worry about him. He might as well be a panhandler or someone who's going to ask you for a cigarette or money or something. But there was that. I was very self-conscious of that, where it's like I look like somebody who's going to stop you and talk to you and want to talk to you about what I'm carrying and what's inside of this. So I was very aware of that when it came to strangers. But then I also thought, if somebody I know were to drive by or if they were to see me walking, they might worry about me. They might be like, he's finally there. They wouldn't be that surprised. I'll say that. I don't think people who know me would be that surprised to see that I'm now at the stage where I will go walking in public with a Bible in my hand. But I do think they might worry or just think he's there now. He's reached that level. And I don't know whether that level is a high level or a low level or just a level. Just a level. But it just shows you how carrying something like this around, it kind of demands a response or some level of attention. It's like being shirtless. Like I went for a walk over the summer, went for several walks shirtless. And there's this particular street where nobody goes. It's kind of an industrial neighborhood. Not even a neighborhood. It's just this light industrial business park area. A good place to walk with your shirt off where you don't feel like you're that shirtless guy. That shirtless guy carrying a Bible. That's my next stage. That's the true next level for me. But I'm not somebody who's walked shirtless a lot in the past, but I have. And of course, I go from talking about the Bible, how this podcast or this YouTube episode was going to be about the physical Bible, to now talking about being shirtless. But what's the difference? Um, But anyway, shirtlessness. I came up with this phrase in my head. I was like, shirtlessness demands a response because some lady screamed like "woo" at me, and it didn't seem flattering. It didn't seem like she was actually hitting on me or catcalling me, as they say. It seemed like she was just giving me a hard time. But it made me think how, if you walk shirtless, like people will yell shit at you or notice it, even though it's just you, with your skin. You don't have your dick hanging out, it's just you, it's just your chest, your arms, whatever the fuck. It still demands some kind of response, and people talk about it a lot, and people judge you. People I mean, obviously there's a whole women going shirtless is a whole other topic, and it's ridiculous that women can't be shirtless too. I mean, like, are we really such animals that we can't see boobs without just, God, I don't even need to go into it. But do we really have such little self control that we just can't see boobs? But on the other hand, it's like people do react. I'll say that they react when they see a shirtless man. And I feel like it's the same exact thing with the Bible, where if you're walking around with a Bible in your hand, people are going to react. Whether they say anything or not, they are going to react inside. They're going to feel something. And that's funny to me. It's funny to me that a book is that powerful. I had a similar sort of feeling the last time, aside from being shirtless, the last time I felt this way was when I found an American flag on a lawn a few blocks away, and it had a sign on it that said, like, "We found this in our yard. It's not ours. Is it yours?" And I was like, I'm going to claim this American flag because I've never owned a big full size American flag. And it was a few days before the 4th of July, so the timing on that was perfect. And you know what? I think I was actually shirtless. No joke. I think I was actually shirtless that day. I was going for a walk, and I decided to grab that flag, and I walked home with it across my shoulder because it had a pole on it and everything. And I got a lot of people looked at me because once again it looked like I was out there bothering people. I didn't look like a guy who just found the Bible, found an American flag, and was carrying it home. I looked like a guy who was out parading with his American flag. Like you see these guys now with the current political climate, because wielding an American flag is this statement now, which is stupid. Like I personally like the American flag. Just growing up, I took it for granted. I thought it was boring. It's like generic. I just thought of it as very generic. The way it's often presented, it's used on brands, on labels, on shirts. You see it everywhere if you're an American. I mean, you see it everywhere if you're not an American too. But I took it for granted on an aesthetic level because I was just like, this is just like everything else. And not even because it was commercial or anything like that. But it's like seeing the Nike swoosh. And once again, I don't mean that in like the commercial sense, like, oh, the American flag's commercialized. I just mean it in the sense that I just took for granted what it was and what it looked like. And in recent years, the last decade or so, really, it's like I've grown to really appreciate what it actually looks like. And I think it's beautiful in a certain way. Uh, but walking home with the American flag, I looked like one of those guys who puts it on the back of his truck. You see those guys, especially in this current political climate, where they have this huge American flag that flaps behind their truck, and it's very aggressive, and it's sort of a right wing statement. It's this sort of pro military. It's just very aggressive, and I have no problem with people showing off American flags. I think it kind of looks cool when someone has it on their property. When you can tell like an old couple lives in a house and they have like a detached garage, a little nice little a rambler house, and then they have a flagpole with an American flag, and they fly it at half mast when they're supposed to fly it at half mast, which I don't really know why people do that. Like they had it at half mast for John McCain, I guess because he was a POW veteran. I guess you do that, but do you do that for all of them? I don't know. I guess just because he was very famous. Um, but there's something kind of cute about that when a couple or an old guy has an American flag. It's like he has this compound. It's just a fucking garage and a house and a driveway and a well manicured lawn, but he has his flagpole too, and it kind of gives it this like, you know, this guy's serious. This is a compound, not just a home. This is a homestead. Um, But anyway, long story short, walking home with the American flag on my shoulder, this big American flag, I think I looked threatening. And I actually ran into an acquaintance because I took a little video of myself walking with it, which is another level of ridiculous to be walking shirtless with a giant American flag over your shoulder, and then to be obviously like videoing yourself, filming. What do we even say for that stuff now? Videoing? I don't know. But dictionary word of the day, videoing. That's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm videoing, webcamming, which sounds dirty. Webcamming, cam. Those words just sound just inherently dirty now. But yeah, there's something seemed very threatening about me walking with that American flag over my shoulder. And a friend I saw, or more of an acquaintance I ran into at a bar later that night, was like, I thought it was a racist thing. And that's stupid too, because some people do. That's the weird thing about it too, is the American flag has become not just politicized, but even just turned into this social object where if you appreciate the American flag, it's somehow like anti-immigrant, anti everyone. I don't know. It's just people tend to think of it as this like very bigoted statement just to appreciate the American flag now, which I think is ridiculous. As much as I don't like the guys who have it on the back of their truck, I think it's equally ridiculous when you can't even appreciate the American flag. I think it's increasingly ridiculous when you can't even appreciate the American flag. But it's true. I do feel that way, and but it was a similar. There's a similar experience when you're walking shirtless, when you're walking with an American flag, and when you're walking with a Bible. You get a reaction from people. It seems to demand a response from people, or just some, even if they say nothing to you, it demands some sort of reaction. And that's very weird. But and in the Bible's case, it's especially weird since it's just information. It's at its core, the Bible is just it's stories and information. Ancient stories and information, no matter how it's been edited or how many questions people have about its authenticity. And I don't mean the authenticity of the stories, but just kind of who put it together, all that stuff. People question every aspect of it. And I mean, it's really no book, it's the book for a reason. The book. Thought I'd actually take a sip of something. I realize that I often have these and they become nothing more than props in my video. I just kind of wave them around. They demand a response. If you walk with one of these, it's true though. If you walk with one of these, it looks like you have one of those Jamaican beers. And people do a double take. It's just everything I carry out of my house makes people do a double take at this point. But walking around with the Bible, it was interesting to think, it's like this is. I almost wanted to hide what it said on the front, and not really. There's that part of me that wants the attention, and a cat on my lap, but there's a part of me that wants that attention of like some people seeing me with the Bible for some reason, and there's a part of me that like doesn't want that attention. And I know it's a very profound idea. There's a part of me that wants the attention and a part of me that doesn't want the attention. And doesn't that just explain so much? I feel like it's the same thing in even making these videos or doing anything, interacting with anybody too. I feel like I'm in this double bind where it's like I want to interact with people, but I don't. But I don't know. But just when you think about what this book represents, it's like it represents so much more than what's inside of it. And I don't really know what's inside of it. I've never read the Bible before, and that's why I also feel like a poser. But one thing I noticed about it is I noticed it had a page ripped out and stuffed in the back, and then I noticed it had markings on it. And it's, of course, page 666. And so somebody ripped it out, and they wrote La Ciaga El Diablo. Something Ese Diablo. So Spanish, I guess that is. For the devil, there's a pentagram. There's some sort of. There's an inverted cross. Some other lettering. Looks like LLS. I can't. OVLLS. I don't know. I'll let you look. I'll let you interpret it. Oh, camera's up here. Camera's up here. My eyes are up here. Yeah. And It's worth noting that they didn't do anything to page 665, and I'm cool with this. Despite the fact that I've been studying the Bible a little bit, if you want to call listening to podcasts studying the Bible and listening to Christian metal, despite being a non-Christian, I'm not a Christian, but I'm allowed to absorb this stuff. Despite that, I'm totally cool with this. I still listen to a lot of Havohedge and Profanatica, some of the most blasphemous U.S. black metal and other black metal around. And that actually gave me my next concern. When I saw that it had been defaced, that it had page 666 torn out and defaced, it made me concerned about like what else happened to this book. Like one page is kind of wrinkled, but fortunately it's not crinkly, because it made me think like, did someone come inside of this? And that's only in my brain because of Profanatica. There was an old Profanatica home video where Paul Ledney, the drummer, masturbates on a Bible, not inside of it, fortunately. But so that's in my brain always. No, and they've got lyrics about that as well. So it made me think, God, I hope someone didn't jerk off on this or in this. And then I thought, or maybe hock a loogie. I hope someone didn't hock a loogie inside of this. Because people have to express that. They have to, express that blasphemy. They can't just see a Bible and not touch it. They've got to. It's once again just that reaction. In the same way that just seeing someone carry a Bible might prompt a reaction, just seeing a Bible in a little lending library, demands you rip out page 666 and write shit on it. But what bothers me about it isn't that someone ripped out the page, because I like that they reinserted it. I really appreciate that they reinserted page 666 back in. Even though it wasn't back where it's meant to go, they at least put it in the back of the Bible so I could reinsert it myself, because there's nothing like reinserting a page into the Bible, back into the Bible. But what bothers me is when they ripped out page 666, they clearly ripped out a number of other pages that directly precede page 666. In fact, page 658 through 664, so that's a good little chunk of pages, are gone, and they didn't reinsert them. They went missing, and maybe that wasn't their fault. Maybe they did reinsert them, and somebody else had possession of this Bible. That sounds cool. Have possession of this Bible. Maybe the Bible has possession of you. But maybe somebody else had it, and they're responsible for the pages going missing. Maybe it wasn't the defacer. But I think there's something way more nefarious, something way more sinister about those pages being completely missing than just page 666 being drawn on and ripped out and reinserted, whatever. I just want to keep saying reinserted. But there's something way more sinister about those missing pages. I'm like, what's on those pages? Not like what's been written on them, not like the defacement, but what's on the actual, what Bible stories are told on those pages that are missing, and do I need them? But it does create a nice little treasure hunt where I feel like I want to read this whole thing, but I feel like I will still be a poser, even though I now have a Bible and I'm going to read it, and I swear I will. I promise every night. Even though I still am going to read this and everything, it's like I'm going to still feel like a poser because I will not have read page 658 and through 664. And I know if I went around bragging after I read this and tell people, hey, I read the Bible, guess what? I read the Bible. Whoever I told that to would probably immediately quiz me on those missing pages or bring those up. Like, what'd you think of this story? And that story would happen to fall on the missing pages. So I've created a nice little treasure hunt for myself where when I'm finished reading this, I'm going to track down another Bible and read those pages. I'm going to go to the library and read just those pages once I'm done with this. Because it'll be such a hard treasure hunt to find another Bible. But how fucked up would it be if every Bible I found after this was missing those exact pages, and every single one had page 666 defaced? But yeah, this is the closest I've had. For years, I've had this Jesus on the crucifix. I got it at an antique store for cheap. It's just plastic. I wish it was metal. Plastic on cheap wood. But I remember I bought it at an antique store, and not to like hang upside down or do anything with. This is before I gave a fuck about esoteric Christianity, and that's kind of my interest. It comes from this very esoteric place. And let me just say that too. You know, being a teenager in the Bush era, it was very easy to, you know, be totally opposed to the far right fundamentalist Christian dogma, because it was everywhere at the time, and it was really a large part of politics. I mean, it was, you know, George Bush pandered to that whole group a lot, and they had a lot of power and control, and it was a lot of the conversation wasn't it was, and the left was much different then too, because it seemed like the left had a much easier target in fundamentalist Christianity, and the Republicans who and that was just strongly associated with the Republicans. And even though Republicans still pander to that, the right wing has become much more. It has a lot more. It has a lot of different moving parts these days, and the fundamentalist Christian part is just one component. But there's a lot of very strange stuff going on with the right wing, and it's very fascinating. It's been interesting to watch it develop, because I feel like the far right sort of fractured, and there's this very non-Christian, very non-traditionally spiritual component to it, and it's been interesting to see how that's basically the dominant force in the right wing these days, not the same fundamentalist Christianity of the Bush era. But as I was saying, being a teenager, it was very easy, especially getting into metal and all this stuff, it was very easy to just be like, oh, whatever they do, I'm the opposite. Whatever they do, I'm the opposite. You know, that's how it felt. You know, you just wanted to do the opposite of what the fundamentalist Christian Republicans were doing. But I feel like as that's become more separate, and I understand it's not completely separate, like the vice president is still a part of that whole world and mindset, and most fundamentalist Christians are very supportive of what's going on. At least they seem to be, I don't know. But at the same time, as I think things have gotten fractured, I think Christianity has gone back to a more esoteric place, or at least for me, it has a more esoteric draw to it, where I feel like we're able to look more at the roots of it than ever before, at least in recent times. And there's a part of it that seems almost pagan, and I know that Christianity, you know, absorbed, if you want to put it politely, a lot of pagan elements, but I feel like it does have this almost pagan feel. It feels there's just something esoteric, and I'm not going to say that Christianity itself. I mean, I guess I could go ahead and say it, that Christianity itself has almost an occult flavor in today's world, especially because a lot of Christians really didn't seem to dig into that. They seem to take things at face value, and especially the fundamentalists, they literally take things at face value. So the fact that there's now this undercurrent that's actually like digging in and like looking at this sort of under the surface, I don't know, I'm not finding my words too well here, but they're looking under the surface more at Christianity, and I think there's an appeal to that, and it applies to a lot more. It applies to life in a much more general way than I feel like the face value fundamentalist interpretations do. And I don't want to get too into that. I've already gotten too far into it. But when I bought this, I bought it at an antique store, and I actually bought it with a biography of Adolf Hitler, which I fortunately haven't gone walking around with. But it was kind of cool because I remember sliding this on the table, and I did have a girlfriend at the time, and she was with me, and she was Jewish. So how's that for points for me? But I remember buying a cross and a biography of Adolf Hitler at an antique store with my Jewish girlfriend at the time. But I remember sliding this across. And by the way, Jesus has a great six-pack. I don't know if it's from emaciation, but he definitely has some abs. But I remember sliding this across the counter to pay for it. This on top of this big, thick Adolf Hitler biography, which I feel like could make me a demon to certain people in today's society, simply purchasing an Adolf Hitler biography, even though the History Channel covers him almost exclusively, or did for about 15 years. People would jokingly call it the Hitler Channel. Um, but even though, Hitler's, the most polarizing, and maybe not even polarizing, because I mean, I don't feel like he has equal amounts support and equal amounts opposition. I feel like he has much more opposition than he does support. Although he does have supporters, I mean that's it's important not to ignore that. But still, I don't think it's a balanced polarization. But nonetheless, I guess you could call him a polarizing figure. He causes people to react. That's sort of the theme here. Things that cause people to react. Hitler, the Bible, uh, the American flag, being shirtless, all those. It's like Jeopardy or something. But buying that, it's like that you could. I don't know. People would judge you for that in today's world, like wanting to read a historical, unbiased biography of one of the most influential, truly one of the most influential figures in modern times, truly the modern Antichrist. Because when people say historically would refer to somebody as the Antichrist, and by the way, my hands are doing this because I got a rosy here. In case you were wondering, I know this episode's got all kinds of provocative subject matter, but it doesn't have that. Um, but when it comes to like, historically, where someone would say, "Oh, this person, they're the Antichrist." Uh, After Hitler, Hitler became the Antichrist, and you don't see comparisons to the Antichrist. You see comparisons to Hitler. If someone's an influential figure, a politician that people don't like, they compare them to Hitler. They don't say he's the Antichrist. They say he's the new Hitler. So I think that's the kind of person you should read a biography of. That's the kind of person you should be well versed in. You should know that guy, he loved American westerns. He loved early American westerns when he was young. Um, you should know what that person liked. You should try to understand the human that became that modern Antichrist rather than just saying, oh, nope, nope, can't talk about him. Because I actually had an experience with that when I was very young. My next door neighbor was a kid. He was a year younger than me, and his parents got a computer. They got a computer. They were one of the first families on the block to get a computer, which was amazing. Like, I really give them some credit. They got a computer and they were very blue collar. Like, the dad made his money in construction. I don't think either parent graduated high school, and very good people. And they got a early computer. This is like 1991 or something. Uh, and they got Wolfenstein. And the kid, my next door neighbor, he got really into it. He would invite you over, come over, play some Wolfenstein. Come play some Wolfenstein with me. Uh, and I remember playing Wolfenstein with him. And somehow someone told me, or somehow I was aware of the fact that the main bad guy in Wolfenstein was supposed to be Hitler. It wasn't his name. I think his name's Wolfenstein, or it's like Castle. It's Castle Wolfenstein. I don't know if the bad guy's name is Wolfenstein, but either way, the bad guy is clearly representative of Hitler. He looks like him. Everything on the walls. I think, do they even have swastikas in that game? Everything either way uses like the Nazi red, the Nazi crimson. Everything in that game is designed to be you're hunting down. You're going into like Nazi fortresses and killing them. So it wasn't a huge stretch that I figured out that's who these guys were, and that this guy was Hitler. And I remember I pointed out to my little friend, I was like, that's supposed to be Hitler. And I didn't even fucking know who Hitler was, really. I was like 6 years old. He was like 5, playing this crazy computer game. And then of course, he goes in the kitchen a few minutes later and he just like tells his mom that. He's like, that guy in the game is supposed to be Hitler. And she goes, what did you say? What did you say? And I know I've told this story, I think, on my podcast before, but still, it's a good story. And he's like, Hitler. And she goes, if you say that again, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. Blue collar punishment. They were nice. They were like not abusive parents. They were very nice people, but it was one of those idle threats because you don't want your kid going around saying Hitler, and you don't want your kid going around saying Hitler. You don't want your kid buying a Hitler biography from the antique store with a crucifix. Maybe, I don't know, but It was just that reaction, because I know that the mom, like, I don't think she graduated high school, so it wasn't like she was a highly educated person who, knew the ins and outs of the Third Reich. It was just simply she knew Hitler was a bad guy, the worst, the Antichrist, and in a way, that's almost like. That's one of the clearest representations of Hitler as the Antichrist that I can think of, because you're not supposed to utter the devil's name. You're not supposed to utter the name of Satan, because that's blasphemy. And it's sort of the same thing with this guy Hitler, where it's like you don't utter his name. This mom had this just visceral reaction where you don't utter that guy's name, because that's blasphemy. It'll bring shame upon our house. So I started out just wanting to talk about the physical Bible. I covered shirtlessness, covered the American flag, covered Hitler. Didn't really say much about the crucifix itself, because there's not really much to say. I feel like the crucifix is something that's very like self-evident, self-explanatory. Um, INRI, I can never remember what that means. The little INRI that's at the top on every crucifix. I associate it with the band Sarcophago, of course. I mean, I learned so much about the Bible from heavy metal, uh, but I don't know what INRI means, so it didn't give me that good of an education. And I'll leave you with a biblical quote. Now, when the sixth hour had come, I was going to say hath, but it doesn't say hath; it says had. Now, when the sixth hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the ninth hour. And at the ninth hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which is translated, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. That's why.